This gaming PC right here is something that someone traded into me when they were getting a higher end PC that I was selling. And I gave them a little bit of value for this off the price of my PC that I was selling them. And when they traded in, they said that it didn't boot properly. They said it had problems when it was booting. And so in today's video, I thought I'd take you guys through the steps on getting a PC like this working again. Now, I haven't booted this thing up. I don't know what to expect, but I got a feeling that something is faulty because they're telling me that it's cutting out essentially. And so that can usually mean a couple of things, but let's just try and see what the real problem is with this PC before we start getting into diagnosing and ultimately fixing it up. So we press the power button on and straight away it just shorts out. That is not even a problem when it's booting. That is just, something seriously wrong. That is automatically a faulty part. And when your PC does this, it's usually one of two things, and that is either the power supply or the motherboard. So what you can do now, the problem with fixing PC parts and PCs up is that usually you want to have spare hardware that you know works, so then you could diagnose what the faulty part is. And I think this is where a lot of individuals, for instance, if they come onto a YouTube video and see something like this, and they're trying to diagnose and fix their own problems, they just don't have spare parts to test with. But if you do flip PC parts, or you do, say, build computers for friends, or even a better thing yet, if you've got another PC in your household, say for instance you're living with family members or someone else and they've got another PC, you can ask the person who's using their computer when they're not using it if you can just borrow their computer and sort of change some parts over and see what is wrong. However, let's get into the first problem here, and this is this system right here. Now, what I usually do in this case is I'll take out the RAM. So in this case, this is an FX-8350, I believe it's an 8350 system. It's got a FX-990 saber-tooth motherboard, which back in the day, this motherboard was actually, I believe it or not, renowned as one of the highest end AM3 Plus motherboards you could get. So I'd actually be surprised if it was the motherboard that was faulty, because it takes a lot to really do this motherboard in. Though of course, sometimes it can be memory and it can be the CPU as well, but we're gonna get around that by just simply doing a couple of things, and that is taking out the memory, and then also after that, we are going to disconnect the CPU 8-pin up here, and then try rebooting it again. So this is just gonna give us quick information on this PC, and while we're at it, we're actually just gonna disconnect the GPU and even turn the PC around and disconnect the SATA cables and see if we can get a basic boot, because a PC should still boot even if you just have the 24-pin connected. So this will give us even more information in our diagnosis process. So we have now disconnected everything but the 24-pin motherboard connector. We've taken out the graphics card even, we've unplugged the hard drives, and we've taken out the RAM, the DDR3 memory, and this system still does the exact same thing the moment it came in here, and that is just switching off instantly. So let's find out which of the two things it is, the motherboard or the power supply, right after today's video sponsor. Never pay full price for Windows 10 or 11 again. With today's video sponsor, SCD Keys, you can get activated for as little as $15 using that coupon BFTYC. Links in the description below. So now we've disconnected all the power supply cables, we've run them back out the front of the case. And this leads us to our next step here, which is to hook up a power supply tester. Now, if you guys are dealing with any used PC parts, especially used power supplies, then you have to get one of these. They're really inexpensive, and not only will they tell you if a power supply is faulty or not, they'll actually tell you if a used power supply has good amounts of life left in it, or if it's got basically not much left in it, which in that case you should preemptively change that power supply out before it goes out, especially if you are reselling PCs. So let's hook this thing up and see what it says in relation to this Corsair power supply.
I want you to stop.
So we have now just found out our problem, and that is with the power supply. This right here, this is the FX-8350 watt professional series, which is kind of surprising because this was meant to be one of Corsair's like top end models of power supplies. And it's kind of surprising to see that with a GTX 780 and an air-cooled FX CPU, it would fail. Even after all those years, it would just fail to the point where it's just shorting out and something's cutting out. Anyhow, we've got the replacement power supply right here. It's a used Cooler Master Silent 600 Watt Pro, which has 40 amps on the 12 volt line. So it should do the job absolutely fine for this build today. We've also run it through the power supply tester, and it's showing some pretty high voltages on the 12 volt line. And what you want here is generally as close to 12 volt as possible on your variances, and same with your 3.3 and 5 volt lines. You want them right on those numbers if possible, but usually the general rule of thumb is to have a 5% tolerance, which in this case, the 12 volt line is still within that 5% tolerance range. And since this is an FX system that I'm going to be reflipping for really cheap, I don't really want to spend a whole lot of money fixing it too. So let's change over this power supply now and also see if we can now get the system up and running 100%, as well as perhaps even change the GPU over with something a little better than a GTX 780, and also give it some tech, yes, lovin'. So I was just gonna get the power supply in one go, but I started cleaning this thing and it was filthy. Like, we're talking to the point where I've had to use 3 disinfectant wipes and they're just full of dirt. And I had to even throw out the dust filters on the front of this PC because it just like had mold on it, to the point where it probably even have a new unidentified species of mold on there. So I just, instead of on an old PC like this, instead of cleaning that dust filter, I just chucked it out. But there's also some really bad news, and that is with the CPU cooler. The bolts attaching the cooler onto the bracket have actually been cross-threaded, and they're on so tight that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check the CPU temperatures once we get the power supply installed. And if they're okay, then that's great. They've used really good thermal paste. But if they're really bad, I'm going to have to do something and get these bolts off this cooler. And yeah, it's not good news. So now we've pieced this thing all back together. It is time for the moment of truth, and that is the beautiful power switch on and see if it all works properly. Okay, so we got a noisy fan somewhere. And it must be the CPU cooler fan. And false alarm, it was actually the GPU fan somehow got caught inside the little plastic thing. I have no idea what exactly happened with this GTX 1070, but everything's fixed now. It's now not noisy at all. And the sad thing was, even if it was this CPU cooler fan, this thing is really difficult to take apart, this old school Cooler Master V8 fan. Not only the bolts cross-threaded, but I even took off this little top plate here, and I just had no idea how to get the fan out. Man, some of these old cooler designs, they should call it the Cooler Master Time Waster. Anyhow, we've now got a complete Windows install cracking, and we're gonna test out the temperatures soon on both the CPU and GPU. Now, another little trick that you can do with these old FX systems, and the reason I kind of do like, even though I don't like the performance so much of the old FX-8350s, I do like the compatibility. So one thing is, if you've got DDR3 memory sitting around and it doesn't work with an Intel system, that doesn't mean it's necessarily faulty. I would put that RAM aside because it may be high density DDR3 memory. Now, high density memory works with AMD, and with the Intel DDR3 systems, generally only low density works. And so if you've got high density memory, you can switch out. In this case, we're going to take out the 8 gigabytes of low density DDR3 memory and put in some high density stuff that doesn't work on Intel rigs, and that's just sitting around here. So we're actually going to upgrade this to 16 gigabytes of DDR3 memory as well and put in a GTX 1070. So all up, we've got a $10 power supply from Les. We've got some memory that is literally, people give it to me for free, the low density stuff, thinking that, I mean the high density stuff, thinking that it doesn't work. And then we've got a GTX 1070 we got in Japan. So we're gonna end up patching up this PC with its trade-in price. And we're going to, I mean, considering hopefully all the temperatures work out, but I got a feeling it will. And what we're gonna do here now is we are going to essentially get the trade-in value, the money we've added on top, and then we're going to add a monitor, keyboard, mouse in and flip this and actually turn it into a profit, rather than having a PC initially that was faulty, had a bad power supply. We are going to now try and make a profit. And that's what used PC flipping is all about, is turning not just the good deals that are really good, everything works, but also taking the trash, fixing it up, and then turning it into treasure. Let's get into those temperatures. And now there is just one thing left to do, and that is flip this setup right here. So we listed that PC up and it was actually sold within a couple of hours. So people, at least where I am living here locally, they're really hungry for just these entry-level budget gaming systems. And so what we took you through here today was a process of where someone trades in something, they think it's broken, there's no value left in it, but hey, they got a bit of value off the price of another system I sold. But then I get it and I'm like, well, instead of taking a loss on this system, I fix it up and then I even turn that into a profit. And that's what used PC flipping is all about. It's about just getting the most value out of what you can on the used market. And if you guys know what we're about at Tech City, we're always about turning that trash into treasure. And we cleaned this system up. It was really dirty. Sure, it took a while to clean, about 30 minutes to clean it up, and we had to diagnose problems. But hopefully you see the process of how I quickly get things done and turn it into the end game, and that's magic that works just like it would brand new. and they're definitely really happy with the system. So I love doing this stuff. I'm gonna give you guys more used content. We've actually got a lot of used parts here, both sent in from you guys with all faulty parts to take a look at and fix. And we've also got some other real budget hardware that I wanna check out how it performs in 2023. So right now I'm sort of updating all my information in my brain about what PC parts match with what combos, what games they can play and what not, because having all this information is really important if you're into PC flipping and you know what to recommend, you know what to price things at, and of course, you know what parts to actually get in the used market. But I will say one thing, that is CPUs and RAM and motherboards right now, that stuff on the used market is really cheap. And so if you can get that at good deals, you can make a lot of magic happen right now. So leading up towards Christmas, definitely a great time to be flipping systems. And if you're having problems with a PC and this video helped you out, then be sure to hit that like button for us. And also let us know in the comments section below what faulty parts you have run into lately and what fixes have you applied. Love reading those comments as always. And with that aside, we've also got the question of the day here, which comes from Felix MDX. And they ask, the main question is why you didn't test them on 4K, where it could shine. As to be honest, anyone who owns a Ryzen 5 3600 and up has no reason for upgrading at all if you just game. Even 5800X barely gives few extra frames in 4K. So they're referring to our 3700X video where we tested the Ryzen 7 with two different graphics cards I would consider pretty well paired to that CPU, and that was the RTX 3070 and also the RX 7800 XT. And both those cards, in my opinion, are more 1440p cards or 1080p. They're not really suited to 4K. And so this is where the catch-22 comes in here with these GPUs, and that is if you go up to 4K, if we leave it at high settings, sure, you'll see basically no difference, but your FPS will be really low. So then you'll most likely just lower all the settings with these GPUs for 4K gaming, and then you'll still come into similar FPS to 1440p, which means that your CPU results that we're looking at in that video at 1440p will be similar to the 4K results at very low settings. So there you're still gonna have a difference between your 3700X versus your 5700X versus your 7950X 3D, if that makes any sense. Basically, in a nutshell, I like to test the GPUs with, especially doesn't really matter with the CPUs, but I like to test the GPUs mainly on the resolutions they're intended for and what most people, I think, are going to play on the resolutions with those GPUs. Hope that answers that question. And with that aside, if you've stayed this far and you're enjoying that Tech Yes content, then be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell to get the content as soon as it drops, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye. But some people with the used market, they can't see what I see, but I know you guys. I gotta ask you a question, and that is, do you see what I see?